Thank you very much for your talk. We have a first question by Ralf Ernstdorfer. I will unmute him. Ralf?
Yeah, so thank you very much. I have a question to your essentially publishing your workflow. You mentioned that there's this option to produce these HTML reports. Does this contain all the rules, essentially all the scripts for the individual steps at a given time? So essentially including something like a version control, such that anyone else could reproduce the entire workflow in a platform-independent manner?
Yes, good question. Thank you. So it does contain the code for each rule, but not like in a way that you could immediately run this again, because it's like encapsulated in the HTML code. So when you really want to publish, so it's rather meant like as a supplementary file 2.0, where people can like dive into everything and look at it by eye, but not for re-executing this file in a sense. So what I do when I publish a workflow is that I always attach this HTML as a supplementary file, and in addition I attach an archive that Snakemake can automatically generate from a workflow that has been run before. And this archive then actually contains the complete workflow definition along with all code and even with the software packages needed. So it's kind of self-contained and people can just download it, unpack it, and immediately run it on their system. So basically you need the two of them in order to have it fully reproducible. So one is for looking at it, like which is the report, and the other is for executing it, which would be the archive, which is much bigger because it also contains the software, where the report is meant to be like as small as possible so that you can easily look at it.
Can I have a follow-up? So what if the rules kind of change over time? So you would need to include something like a version control.
Yes, so the idea is that every Snakemake workflow should be put in a Git repository or any other version control system. And like upon publication, you create a snapshot, like basically from the version that you used for generating the results. And this is then published with the paper, for example. But of course, you can afterwards go on within your repository and further develop it. But then like always publication should take a snapshot from that version control. That's the idea.
Thank you.
So we have a question in the Q&A manual by Martin Uhring. I read it. Johannes, can you run nodes dynamically and can these nodes spawn new nodes in the DAG, or is it static? For us, we often need to run a calculation to know what are the steps to do next.
Yes, so conditional dynamic execution is possible. So by default, Snakemake tries to pre-compute everything and then run it. But you can mark certain input as being like subject to conditional evaluation. And then this input will be like dynamically evaluated once the requested output files of other rules are available. And you can even peek into these output files and decide something based on their contents. And based on this contents, even completely rewire the graph of jobs and choose different steps or skip certain steps and so on. So that's all possible.
So next question by Michael Hartelt. How would Snakemake handle workflows where the steps have to happen on different systems? For example, I might assemble data on a lab computer, do heavy calculations on a cluster, and then analyze the results on an office computer.
Yeah, so this is like in one workflow execution that's not supported. So you always need to target that upon starting the workflow, you need to target whatever computing platform you have available, like a cluster or a local machine and so on. In theory, there's no limitation in the system itself that would disallow it, but it's currently just not exposed. But that's actually a good suggestion. So one could definitely add that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then the third question, is it possible for two Snakemake instances to create the same output file?
Yes, definitely. So that's possible, but not in the same working directory. So as long as the two Snakemake instances would want to write into the same working directory, they would actually fail with an error beforehand. So this determined beforehand, and Snakemake is locking every file it wants to create inside of the working directory. So you will never be able to generate a situation where such a race condition occurs. So it's kind of avoided.
I would have a quick question myself. You mentioned in the beginning that you, when you publish your results, you create an archive that contains all the analysis scripts or also softwares that are necessary to do this particular workflow. This is, however, of course, not always possible because some of the tools we use, we cannot simply distribute, also some of the softwares also. Is that problematic? How could one circumvent that?
Yeah, so if you're not allowed to do this kind of distribution by license, for example, or because it's commercial or whatever, then of course you will always run into reproducibility issues. So of course you can, like, an option would be to then not annotate this software in the Snakemake workflow. And then Snakemake will of course also not try to distribute it. Another option would be to still have it as a conda package in your workflow, because you can have local conda packages as well, and then just, like, before really publishing the workflow, you could remove it from the archive. That's always possible. But yeah, such tools always cause a lot of headache because it's not so simple anymore to reproduce everything. You will definitely need to add, like, instructions for people how to download the software and so on.
Okay, thank you very much. It was a very interesting talk, and thank you for the discussion.